Welcome back. I have here with me a very special guest. We're going to be talking gender issues. She's very passionate about women, especially young women, I believe, and their issues across the continent. Yasmin Bello Osage, founder She Leads Africa.
Thank you so much.
You founder or co-founder?
Co-founder. Let me know. Let me know.
She's at home like,
yeah, she'll be like watching. She'll be like, oh, is that so?
This is happening right in front of my face. I was complaining to her. That's Afua.
Yes.
Yeah, I was complaining to her like, yo, you guys are always taking these fun trips. There was one to Hong Kong or to Singapore, I think, some time ago. There's a South Africa. I mean, I'm very passionate about women.
Yeah, exactly. You're like me, so
can I just, you know?
Yeah. Send me your CV. I will really look at it diligently.
So what does She Leads Africa do? Because, I mean, I know you've been around for quite a bit now.
Yes.
How old is it, and what exactly does the organization do?
So about 2 years old. And I think that at the center of our organization, we just really want to focus on how do we help kind of young African women build successful businesses and careers. And I think that for us, like, we're less wedded to how we do that, and we're more focused on, okay, this is the mission. Now, when we find out that what people want are workshops and events, then we go and do that. If we find out that what people want is more digital content, they want ebooks, they want webinars, we'll do it that way. I think that as an organization, we always want to be flexible and deliver things in such a way that it's actually useful to our community. But I think that at the center, the mission is, look, you know, Africa needs to develop. We need to make sure that women are fully engaged in that process. And so we want to create an organization that speaks
So who's
the
target exactly? Is there an age target? Is there a sort of an educational target? What exactly do you look for?
So I think that, you know, we know that we can't be everything to everyone. And we certainly, I think that we're humble enough to understand that. And I think we started because we found that there were a lot of people who were focusing on kind of, you know, micro industry, like microcredit, microfinance. But there weren't as many people focusing on people in the middle. So you always hear about people talking in Africa about the missing middle. So we wanted to think about how we empower them. So our typical community member is between the ages of 18 to 35, even though we go as high as 45, but that's kind of where the big chunk sits. Most of them will at least have a secondary school education. We do a lot of stuff online. So I think initially we started off with people who will be internet enabled. And I do find that kind of most of the people who are in our organization now tend to be in urban centers. But I think that that doesn't necessarily mean we discriminate. You know, funny enough, 20% of our audience is actually male, right? And then we have people exactly like you. Then we have people from all over. So we don't discriminate against everyone, but I think that we've started with an initial focus. And then, you know, we will, of course, always want to expand kind of 5-10 years.
Yeah. Talking about expansion, I think you had your South African launch. Or something along those lines not too long ago. How does that work now? Because it looks like a lot of work, first of all. I know you're in Nigeria, you're in Ghana as well. Nigeria, for one, is a handful, I'm sure. Must be a handful. So how is it being able to handle all of this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's tough. We have we have a great team. I think that, you know, very much from the beginning, so I mean, I'm half Ghanaian, my co-founder is full Ghanaian. We both lived in Nigeria, so we always wanted it to feel like a pan-African organization and not a Nigerian organization. Because you'll find that, especially when you're basing a company in Nigeria, as you move out, people are like, you're just Nigerians, right? Exactly, yeah. So I think it was very important to us very early on to make sure that we were doing things in different countries. And I think, I mean, in terms of how it works, it sucks, but at the end of the day, you wake up early, you sleep late, you just do what has to be done. I mean, I think that you're doing so many different things right now, so you understand what it means to kind of balance different things. And I think that ultimately, if it's something that you're passionate about, you keep going. And we have an amazing team of people who are based in different countries, who I think really help us amplify our message across the continent.
We're going to talk about your Slay Festival, which is coming up. But before we get to that, I want to just deviate, not completely, though. I want to talk about feminism now.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's gotten quite a lot of press, if I may use that word, in the last, let me say, 2 years, especially in this part of the world where we have people like Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie who's become very vocal about it, you know. I mean, the Beyonce song, Nigerians are huge Beyonce fans, especially Africans as a whole, actually. So feminism has become a part of our discourse generally. But you still find people who say, what is it exactly? Why is it such a confusing sort of notion? You would think it would be something very simple to understand. Why are we still why is it such a discussion that we have here?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, with all terms, people define them differently, right? So I think that what I would say I think feminism is probably something a little different to what you would say, is a little bit different to what someone else would say. I mean, I think that
But isn't it just about equality? Why is it different, though?
So that's what I think, but then everyone's acting confused. So I'm like, okay, maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe it's a little bit more. But I mean, to me, it's very much just saying we want to make sure that kind of women have an equal role to play in society, and we want to make sure that they're able to seize those opportunities. But I think that people are less scared of the word feminism and like more scared of, I think, sometimes what it actually means, right? Because one of the things I find really interesting is I speak to a lot of my guy friends and they're like, oh yeah, we're feminists, all about equality. And then I'm like, oh, but when you come home at night, like, you know, you expect your food to be, exactly, you expect dinner to be there. And they're like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, well, I mean, how's that fair if, you know, you want your wife to work as well, but you want her to work at the office and then come back and work at home, but you should only work at the office and then come and chill at home. So I think that sometimes when people start seeing the implications of it, especially guys, because that means, like, if women are going to come into the workforce, it means that guys might have to do more at home.
So taking from that your point now, is it okay, can a feminist also be a worker and be the one who also goes home and cooks for her husband? Can you be a feminist and do those?
I think so. I mean, so to me, it's like all about choice. I don't necessarily even think that if you're a feminist, it means you have to work. Like, I think that if you've made the decision with your partner that you want to stay at home and bring a family, that's fine. For me, it's just about choice and individual agency. You should be able to make the decision. If you decide I want to stay at home, then you're able to stay at home. If you decide that I want to go into the workforce, you have, I think, like a family structure and also an organizational structure that supports you. Whether that means that sometimes there is, you know, parental leave, not just maternity leave. So that if a guy wants to stay home, you know, with his children, in fact, if the woman wants to leave a little bit earlier and start working again, then that's possible.
Yeah.
But I think that to me, it's all about like people having choices and less about us defining them. Because me saying that every single woman, you have to work and you have to hustle and you shouldn't care, you shouldn't wear makeup and God forbid, you know what I mean? Like, that's like the exact thing that I think that we thought that men were doing before.
Yeah. I mean, I know you are not Chimamanda, but do you think that's what she meant when she said something along the lines of her feminism being different from Beyonce's? You know, I think she said something along those lines. I wonder if that had anything to do with maybe culture? The fact that she is Nigerian and her issues are different, maybe? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think that like the issues facing, I think, African-American women will be different to the issues facing African women. There will, of course, be some similarities, but the solutions will be different. The context in which it's, you know, being worked in is going to be different. I think in the States, there'll always be a race element that's added to it that we don't necessarily like have here, but there are other things that we're dealing with here. So I think it will always be
you deal with young, sort of upwardly mobile young women. What are the issues they face with regards to gender here? What are the biggest things you hear them complain about? Even with the education and the fact that these are women who probably have a 9-to-5 and you know, own their businesses. What are the gender issues they tend to complain about for the most part?
I mean, so I think that, you know, I typically hear like 3 or 4, and sometimes it's not even people hearing it, it's you seeing it. So, I mean, I start from the point of education. So it is true that you have kind of many more women going into universities now, but I find that when you enter the workforce, right, you see a bit of a split. I find that you tend to find women over-concentrated in certain areas. So a lot of women in HR, a lot of women in admin, but many more men in like sales, biz dev, marketing. And now, like, if you're in a company like structure, 90% of the time, like, the CEO is going to come from a revenue generating unit. It's not going to be the head of HR becoming like the CEO, like 9 times out of 10, right? And this is just a fact. So if you have women over concentrated in these areas, then you find that fewer and fewer of them tend to rise to the top echelons, like, of the corporate level. I think even more importantly, if you think about like the skill set that you develop, like when you're an entrepreneur, it's all about it's going out there, it's hustling, it's a lot of sales, it's a lot of marketing, it's all about how do you bring money in. Now, if you've been working in biz dev and organization for 3-5 years, and I've been working in a different function where I'm not as exposed to that side, like who is better equipped to start a business, right? There's like one versus another. So this is something whereby, okay, it's not necessarily an insidious, oh my gosh, women, you stay at home, like you don't make any money, but it just kind of turns out that way because of the way in which I think people are educated at work. I think the other big things is a networking piece, right? So like so much, I mean, I remember I was with my boyfriend recently and we were going to see one of his mentors and we went at like 11 o'clock at night, right? And we're like just hanging out in his house. And my point of like, think about how if you're like a single young woman in Nigeria, you're going to like an older guy's house at like 11 o'clock at night. Exactly, like your mentor. You're like, yeah, right. Like, is that what we're calling it now, your mentor? Right? It's just like, I think a little bit like more difficult. It's a little bit harder. And like, you feel uncomfortable putting yourself in the situation. Sometimes the situation becomes uncomfortable. So there's certain rooms that are a little bit difficult for you to be in. And even starting in SLA, like I found that there are certain conversations that I can't have with people, that I have to ask like a guy friend, or I have to ask my brother or a cousin or my dad to have those conversations for you. Just because sometimes it's like a woman, there's a way in which it's a little bit like uncomfortable, or people don't, I think, take you as seriously.
Is that a cultural thing, or just a woman thing across board? I mean,